The text arrived in the middle of Lucy Kate's busiest morning at the boutique she'd built from scratch, a store filled with carefully curated designer pieces and an atmosphere that made every customer feel special. She was in the middle of helping Mrs. Calhoun find the perfect cashmere sweater when her phone buzzed with a notification that she would later remember with absolute clarity. "I'm leaving you and moving to San Diego with my 22-year-old girlfriend. I've emptied our joint account. Bye." Jason, her hands didn't tremble as she read it. Her voice didn't crack as she continued helping Mrs. Calhoun decide between the cream and blush options. The only sign of the nuclear bomb her husband had just dropped was a slight tightening around her eyes, a flicker of something cold and sharp behind her usual warm smile. "Take your time, Mrs. Calhoun," she said smoothly, folding the sweater neatly. "You deserve the perfect one." After Mrs. Calhoun left with her purchase, wrapped in the boutique's signature gold paper, Lucy Kate locked the front door for her lunch break. The lock clicked shut like a punctuation mark on the end of a chapter she hadn't realized was already closing. She reread the message. "San Diego with my 22-year-old girlfriend." It felt like a punchline to a joke she hadn't been let in on. The signs had been there for months, late nights, that didn't line up with the paychecks he deposited new cologne she hadn't bought him, and the sudden interest in work dinners that never ended before midnight. 3 months ago, she'd found the receipt for a romantic dinner for two on a night he claimed to be working late. That night, she'd opened a separate bank account in her name, only moving most of her personal savings to safety. She'd even played along with Jason's idea of combining accounts to simplify things, transferring enough to the joint account to keep him from getting suspicious. The rest, every dollar she had earned and protected, was secure. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. "Don't bother trying to stop me. Chloe and I leave tomorrow. I'll send for my things later." Chloe, the new receptionist at his company. Lucy Kate had met her once at the holiday party, her laugh too loud, and her hand lingering too long on Jason's arm. She was young enough to be Jason's daughter, naive enough to believe she was different. Lucy Kate didn't bother responding. Instead, she called the lawyer she'd quietly met with 2 months earlier when she'd found suspicious charges on their credit card. "It's time," she said simply. "He just made his move," her lawyer replied. "The papers are ready. Do you want me to have him served in San Diego?" "No rush," Lucy Kate said. "Let him think he's won." She poured herself a glass of water and sat down at her office desk. Her thoughts calm and methodical. She wasn't a woman who would beg for someone who didn't deserve her. She'd spent too long building her boutique, her little shop that Jason always called a hobby, to let him tear it down in one careless text. Another text pinged in. Jason again. "I know this must be hard for you. You're not getting any younger after all. At least you have your little shop to keep you busy." Her little shop. The boutique she'd opened with no help from him. The boutique that paid more in a year than he earned in his corporate job. She smiled faintly, thinking of the surprise that would greet him in San Diego, certified letters and court orders that would arrive before he even finished unpacking. The house, her grandmother's old home, was in Lucy Kate's name alone, and she'd always kept it that way, despite Jason's constant suggestions to put him on the deed. Her instincts, so often second-guessed in the past, had proven exactly right. She spent the evening organizing documents for her lawyer bank statements, credit card statements, Jason's reckless text messages, careful, deliberate steps forward. She found their wedding album tucked in the back of her bookshelf. Jason looked so different in those pictures, before the midlife crisis, before the younger woman, before the cold calculation in his eyes. Her phone buzzed with another text. Jason was getting bolder. "I've been planning this for months. Chloe understands me in ways you never could. You'll be fine. Maybe you'll find someone more your own age. My family agrees we've grown apart." Lucy Kate screenshot every message, adding them to her growing file. Let him brag. Let him think he'd outsmarted her. She wanted every word of his to become part of the case her lawyer would build. The last message that night, BTW. "I used the joint card to book our flights and hotel in San Diego. Consider it my parting gift. LOL. Perfect." She called the credit card company. "Mrs. Kate," the representative said politely, "how can I help you? I need to report fraudulent charges and cancel a card immediately. Of course, ma'am. Can you identify the charges? Two first-class tickets to San Diego and a suite at the Seaside View Hotel. And I need to remove my husband as an authorized user. I have text messages from him admitting to using our joint card to book the trip. The representative's voice took on a faint edge of satisfaction. I'll handle this right away, Mrs. Kate. Lucy Kate could almost picture Jason and Chloe arriving at the airport the next day, only to find their tickets invalid and their hotel reservation canceled. She hoped Chloe liked budget motels. Another message from Jason arrived as she poured herself a glass of her favorite Chardonnay, the good stuff she'd been saving for a special occasion. Don't worry about the house. I'll let you stay there until you find something smaller. She laughed out loud at that one. Did he really think he had a claim to her grandmother's house? Another buzz, another display of his arrogance? And I know the shop means a lot to you. We can work out a fair payment for your half. Her half. The business she'd built, funded, and poured herself into. She almost felt sorry for him, almost. She settled in for the night, surrounded by the quiet of her own home, the weight of the betrayal already fading under the clear certainty of her next move. Tomorrow, she'd finalize the papers, and Jason would learn in a courthouse or on the steps of his new motel that she'd never been as powerless as he'd believed. Her phone buzzed again, but she silenced it. She didn't need to hear the noise of a man who'd already lost everything that mattered. Tomorrow was coming, and Lucy Kate was ready. The next morning, Lucy Kate woke to a phone that wouldn't stop buzzing. Jason's name flashed on the screen again and again, his messages shifting from self-satisfied to desperate in a matter of hours. She didn't bother to read them right away. Instead, she poured her coffee, savoring the smell of dark roast filling the kitchen. She'd redesigned herself paid for with money Jason had never touched. By the time she finally picked up her phone, the messages had turned frantic. What did you do to our credit card? The airline says the tickets are invalid. The hotel canceled our reservation. You need to fix this now. She almost laughed. Did he really think she'd be the one to fix his mess? Ignoring the texts, she got dressed in a tailored dress that always made her feel powerful. She pulled her hair back into a sleek ponytail, applied a swipe of red lipstick, and headed to her boutique. Fridays were always busy, and she intended to make today no different. As she walked down Main Street, she caught her reflection in a shop window. She didn't look like a woman whose husband had run off with a younger girl. She looked like someone in control, someone who would never let a betrayal define her. At the boutique, she was greeted by her assistant manager, Mariah, who had already begun unpacking the shipment of new summer dresses. Everything all right? Mariah asked carefully, sensing Lucy Kate's unusually calm mood. Everything's fine, Lucy Kate said with a small smile. Let's get these dresses steamed and on the racks. By mid-morning, the store was buzzing with loyal customers and new visitors drawn in by the fresh window displays. Lucy Kate moved through the space with quiet confidence, helping a young woman find the perfect dress for her engagement party, offering styling tips to a grandmother shopping for her granddaughter. Each interaction was a reminder of what she'd built: her reputation, her business, her life. Jason could try to tear it down all he wanted, but she'd spent years fortifying it against storms just like this. Near noon, her phone rang again. This time, it was Jason's mother, Lorraine. Lucy Kate, dear Lorraine, began, her voice carefully measured. Jason told us everything. How you've been cold and distant. How you're being vindictive, now causing trouble with his travel plans. Lucy Kate put her on speaker, calmly adjusting a display of designer handbags as she replied. Did he also mention emptying our joint account or using our credit card to fly off with his girlfriend? A beat of silence. Lorraine cleared her throat. Well, he said you left him no choice. That you were difficult. Lorraine. I have the texts, Lucy Kate said quietly. The ones where he bragged about stealing our money and mocked me for my age. Would you like me to read them to you? Silence again, then a sigh. He did seem unkind. I told him that last night. I appreciate the call, Lorraine, Lucy Kate said, but I think it's best if we end this conversation now. My lawyer has advised me to have minimal contact with Jason's family during the proceedings. Proceedings? You mean goodbye, Lorraine? Lucy Kate ended the call and tucked her phone back into her pocket. She took a deep breath and looked around the boutique. The sun streamed through the front windows, glinting off the glass shelves and making the rows of jewelry sparkle. It felt like a promise light would always find its way back in. That afternoon, news started to trickle back through mutual friends. Jason and Chloe had checked into a budget motel near the airport, their big escape to San Diego, suddenly a far cry from the luxury suite Jason had promised. Lucy Kate could only imagine the arguments playing out in that dingy motel room, Chloe's wide-eyed optimism turning to disappointment as she realized just who she'd run away with. Around 3 o'clock, her lawyer called with an update. "We've secured an emergency hearing for Monday morning," she said. Given Jason's admission of emptying the joint account and using shared credit cards, we're in a strong position to freeze all remaining assets. "Has he been served yet?" Lucy Kate asked. "Not yet, but he will be soon. The process server has his motel address." Lucy Kate felt a surge of satisfaction. Jason thought he'd won, that she'd be too devastated to fight back. But he'd underestimated her, and now he was about to learn what real consequences looked like. After hanging up, she turned her attention to the boutique's afternoon rush. She greeted every customer with a smile, helped a mother find the perfect graduation gift for her daughter, and offered styling tips to a woman celebrating a milestone birthday. She didn't let the chaos of her personal life seep into the calm, curated elegance of the boutique. Near closing, she received another text from Jason. "You think you're so smart, but I made copies of all the boutique's financial records. Half of it is mine. Don't forget that." She forwarded the message to her lawyer without a word. Let Jason keep digging himself deeper. Let him believe that a few old receipts would change the fact that she'd built this place on her own, funded every inch of it herself. Separate assets, separate lives. Later that evening, after locking up the boutique, Lucy Kate walked to a small bistro down the street. She ordered a glass of Merlot and a plate of fresh pasta, treating herself to a moment of peace in the quiet corner booth she'd always loved. She watched the evening crowd stroll by, outside her thoughts steady and calm. She didn't feel like a woman whose world had just been upended. She felt like someone on the verge of something new, someone who had survived the worst her husband could throw at her and come out the other side stronger. When she got home, she found an email from the credit card company confirming that all fraudulent charges had been reversed and that Jason's access had been permanently revoked. She felt a small thrill of victory. Every small win was another piece of her life wrested back from his grasp. She ended the night curled up in bed with a book she hadn't touched in months, a novel she'd been meaning to finish, but had always set aside for other priorities. As she turned the pages, she realized how much she'd sacrificed over the years, how much she'd let Jason's needs overshadow her own dreams. Not anymore. Tonight was hers. And tomorrow, she'd wake up and continue building the life he'd tried to destroy. Because the truth was simple, she'd never needed him, and she wasn't about to start now. The weekend passed in a blur of paperwork and quiet strength. Lucy Kate spent Saturday at her boutique, but her mind was never far from the hearing on Monday. She knew Jason would try to twist the story play, the victim in a drama he'd written himself. But she had her own script, and it was backed by bank statements, signed contracts, and every single text message he'd so carelessly sent. On Sunday evening, Lucy Kate sat at her kitchen table, surrounded by folders meticulously organized in neat stacks. Receipts for every business expense she'd covered on her own. Screenshots of Jason's bragging texts where he'd mocked her for her age and declared he was moving on to someone better. Each document felt like a layer of armor. She took a breath and looked around her kitchen, the warm glow of the pendant lights reflecting off the white marble countertops she'd chosen herself. This was her sanctuary, her home. No matter how many times Jason tried to lay claim to pieces of her life, she knew he'd never touch this space. Or her resolve. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Jason. "You'll be sorry. I have proof that the boutique was funded with joint money. My lawyer says it's half mine. You can't stop me." She didn't respond. She forwarded the text to her lawyer, who called her immediately. "Lucy Kate, we're ready. He can try to argue all he wants. but your careful record-keeping is airtight. Monday's hearing will make that clear." She exhaled, feeling a surge of confidence. Jason might be loud, but she had always been methodical. He'd never understood that her silence wasn't weakness, it was patience. She'd been waiting for the right moment, and now it was here. Monday morning dawned cold and bright. Lucy Kate wore a tailored navy suit, her hair swept back in a sleek bun. She looked like exactly what she was, a woman who knew her worth. Outside the courthouse, she saw Jason standing by the steps. He was dressed in a new jacket that looked expensive, but didn't quite fit him, his face pale and anxious. Chloe wasn't there. Lucy Kate had heard through the grapevine that she'd already left him, fed up with his broken promises and empty dreams. Jason's eyes flicked to Lucy Kate as she approached, and for a moment she saw something almost like fear. She gave him a cool nod and walked past him, her heels clicking steadily on the marble floor. Inside the courtroom buzzed with tension. Jason's lawyer, a man with a shiny smile and an ill-fitting suit, tried to paint Lucy Kate as calculating someone who'd hidden her business behind a wall of paperwork to keep it from her husband. "My client contributed to the growth of this boutique," he argued. "He deserves a fair share of what was built during their marriage." Lucy Kate's lawyer, a calm woman named Evelyn, didn't flinch. "Your Honor," Evelyn said, her voice measured and confident, "Lucy Kate Harrison, my client, founded the boutique before her marriage. She funded it entirely herself, using personal savings she'd earned and protected. Every dollar Jason Harrison claims has already been accounted for, and the documentation is here in black and white." The judge reviewed the files carefully, his brow furrowed in concentration. He read the text Jason had sent, the ones where he admitted to emptying their joint account and using shared credit cards for his affair. Each word was another nail in the coffin of Jason's credibility. "Mr. Harrison," the judge said at last, fixing Jason with a steady gaze, "you admit to using joint funds for personal travel with another woman?" "Yes." Jason's face flushed. I was just trying to start over. I needed a clean break." The judge raised an eyebrow. By committing financial fraud, Jason's lawyer shifted uncomfortably. "Your Honor, my client made some poor decisions that cost Mrs. Harrison thousands of dollars." The judge interrupted, his tone icy. "And now he seeks to claim ownership of her separate property." Lucy Kate sat motionless, her back straight, and her chin lifted. She could feel Jason's gaze on her, but she refused to look at him. This wasn't about him anymore. This was about her. Evelyn stepped forward again. "Your Honor, we have further evidence, documented accounts showing every expense for the boutique, all made from Lucy Kate's personal accounts before and during the marriage. We also have texts from Mr. Harrison in which he calls the boutique her little shop and dismisses it as a hobby he wanted no part of." The judge took his time reviewing the evidence. Every minute that passed felt like a lifetime to Jason, whose foot tapped nervously against the floor. He'd thought this would be easy, thought he could charm his way into taking half of everything Lucy Kate had built. He was realizing far too late that she'd been preparing for this day, long before he ever sent that first smug text. At last the judge spoke. "Given the clear evidence of separate property and the admitted financial misconduct by Mr. Harrison, I'm granting Mrs. Harrison's motion to freeze all shared assets pending final dissolution of marriage. Mr. Harrison is ordered to return any funds removed from the joint account within 48 hours. Jason blanched. "But that money's gone," he said, his voice rising. "We spent it on, then I suggest you find a way to replace it," the judge said coolly. "This court takes a very dim view of financial misconduct." Lucy Kate felt something in her chest unclench. Relief. Victory. She didn't smile. She wouldn't give Jason that satisfaction, but she let the smallest breath of calm fill her lungs. Outside the courthouse, Jason caught up to her as she walked down the steps. "You planned this all along," he hissed, his face twisted with bitterness. "You knew you'd get everything." Lucy Kate stopped and turned to him, her eyes clear and unwavering. "No, Jason. I just paid attention. And unlike you, I understood the value of protecting what mattered." He opened his mouth to say something else, but his mother appeared behind him, her face lined with exhaustion and disappointment. "That's enough, Jason," she said quietly. You've embarrassed yourself enough already. Lucy Kate watched them walk away, a mother's hand on her son's shoulder as he slumped under the weight of his own choices. She didn't feel pity. She felt freedom. When she got home that night, she poured herself a glass of wine and sat in her office, the framed screenshot of Jason's final text. Have fun with your little shop sitting on the shelf beside her latest business award. The boutique was thriving. And so was she. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, more work, more opportunities to keep building the life Jason had tried to steal from her. But tonight, she was content. Because she knew now more than ever that the best revenge wasn't about getting even. It was about getting better. Lucy Kate woke the next morning to a crisp blue sky, the light slanting through her bedroom window in warm golden streaks. It felt like the universe had finally caught up with the truth she'd always known: she was stronger than Jason had ever believed. At the boutique, Monday's court victory was already trickling into local gossip. Some of her best customers, women she'd known for years, came in with bright eyes and warm words. I heard what happened, one of them said in a low voice, her hand brushing Lucy Kate's shoulder. You're amazing, you know that. Lucy Kate smiled softly. I'm just doing what I have to do. As she unpacked a new shipment of leather handbags, her assistant Mariah looked up from the register. Lucy, the phone's been ringing off the hook. Journalists even. They want to know your side of the story. Lucy Kate's lips pressed into a thin line. She didn't want her personal pain to become a headline, but she also knew this was an opportunity to show other women that you could face betrayal and still rise. I'll think about it, she said, moving to adjust the handbags in the window display. For now, let's just keep the focus on the boutique. By lunchtime, her phone buzzed again. Another message from Jason, his tone shifting from defiance to pleading. You're ruining everything. I never meant to hurt you. Can't we work something out? She stared at the words, the irony of them. He hadn't meant to hurt her. He'd emptied their joint account, flaunted his affair in her face, tried to claim half of the business she'd built alone. She forwarded the message to her lawyer and put the phone away. At 1 o'clock, Lorraine called again. Jason's mother. This time her voice was heavy with apology. I don't know what to say to you anymore, she said quietly. He's not the man I thought he was. He told us you were controlling, that you didn't support him, but after what he's done, I see now. I'm so sorry, Lucy Kate. Lucy Kate felt a flash of something that almost resembled sympathy, but she pushed it aside. Lorraine's regret was too late to change anything. She'd had her chance to see the truth months ago. Thank you for calling, Lucy Kate said carefully. But I have to keep my distance, for my own peace. I understand, Lorraine whispered. I hope you find the happiness he tried to take from you. Lucy Kate ended the call and turned back to her boutique, letting the words wash over her like a gentle rain. The happiness Jason had tried to take was already finding its way back. In the quiet strength of her daily routine, in the laughter of customers discovering something beautiful in her shop, in the small but potent thrill of knowing she was standing on her own 2 feet without him. That afternoon, Mariah approached her with a conspiratorial smile. You won't believe this, she said, her voice low. A friend of mine saw Jason at a cafe near the courthouse. He was there with Chloe. They were arguing like full-on meltdown. He was yelling about how you took everything from him, how he had nothing left. Lucy Kate's eyebrows lifted. And Chloe. Let's just say she didn't look like the love-struck receptionist anymore, Mariah said, rolling her eyes. She looked like a woman who realized she'd backed the wrong horse. Lucy Kate let out a soft laugh. It wasn't cruel, it was a release. The weight she'd been carrying for months, finally lifting as Jason's carefully built lies fell apart. She spent the evening at home, curled up on her couch, with a stack of design magazines, sketching ideas for a new jewelry line she'd been dreaming of for months. She'd always wanted to expand the boutique's offerings. Now she finally had the freedom and clarity to do it. As she worked, her phone buzzed with an unexpected call from Amanda, Jason's sister. I know I wasn't there for you at first, Amanda said, her voice tinged with shame. He was so convincing. He played the victim so well. But now I see what you've been dealing with all along. Lucy Kate's heart softened a fraction. She remembered the way Amanda had looked at her on the day of her wedding, like she was family. Maybe she'd meant it once. "Thank you for saying that," Lucy Kate said simply. "I hope you're taking care of yourself too." "I am," Amanda replied. "He's staying with Mom and Dad for now, but—" "He's so angry, Lucy Kate. He still thinks he's owed something from you." "He's owed nothing," Lucy Kate said, her voice calm. "And he's going to learn that the hard way." After the call, Lucy Kate looked around her living room. The walls were lined with framed photographs of her travels: Italy, France, small towns in the Pacific Northwest. Places Jason had always complained were too expensive, too inconvenient, too much for his taste. Now each photo felt like a promise to herself she wouldn't let anyone else define the boundaries of her life ever again. That night, she poured a glass of wine and flipped through an old notebook where she kept ideas for new product lines. The jewelry collection was taking shape in her mind, bold, elegant pieces that spoke of power and grace. She imagined them in the boutique's front window, each one a testament to the fact that she hadn't just survived this storm, she'd grown from it. Before bed, she checked her email one last time and saw a message from her lawyer. Jason's latest petition has been dismissed. The judge has ordered him to pay the court costs. He's running out of options. Lucy Kate smiled a small, fierce smile that reached all the way to her eyes. Jason had thought he could take everything from her, but all he'd really done was set her free. As she turned off the light and settled into bed, she felt a calm settle over her, like a blanket. Tomorrow would be another day to build something new, something that was hers alone. Jason might have thought he was writing the final chapter of her story with that cruel text, but he'd only given her a new beginning. And this time, she wouldn't waste a single word. The days that followed were a flurry of energy and quiet determination. Lucy Kate threw herself into her boutique, expanding the store's online presence, and finalizing plans for the new jewelry collection she'd envisioned during the worst days of Jason's betrayal. Every day felt like a new chance to rebuild the life he'd tried to steal from her. Word spread fast around town. Customers poured in, not just to shop, but to show their support. Lucy Kate was no longer just the owner of the most beloved boutique in the city, she was a symbol of resilience. One Saturday morning, as she arranged a display of delicate gold necklaces, Mariah leaned in with a mischievous smile. "Lucy, you won't believe who just walked in." Lucy Kate turned, and her breath caught for just a moment. Chloe. Chloe looked different from the bubbly receptionist she'd once been, her shoulders hunched slightly, her makeup minimal, and her eyes tired. She walked slowly toward the counter, clutching a small handbag like it was a lifeline. "I didn't come to cause trouble," Chloe said softly. I just wanted to apologize." Lucy Kate studied her, taking in the traces of sadness and regret in her expression. Chloe's youth hadn't been enough to shield her from the cold reality of Jason's world. "I believed him," Chloe said, her voice barely a whisper, "when he said you were cold, that you didn't understand him. But now, I know he was just using me to feel young again. I'm so sorry, Lucy Kate." Lucy Kate paused, the weight of Chloe's words hanging in the air. She thought of the countless nights she'd wondered how it would feel to confront the other woman, what she would say. But now, standing in the bright, beautiful boutique she'd built herself, she realized she didn't feel anger or pity. She just felt done. "Thank you for saying that," Lucy Kate said calmly. "But you don't owe me anything. Jason made his choices. So did you." Chloe nodded, tears in her eyes. "I know. I'm moving back home. I need to start over." "Then do it," Lucy Kate said, "and don't let anyone tell you that you're not enough." Chloe left quietly, and Lucy Kate watched her go, feeling the final piece of that tangled story slip away. Jason's betrayal no longer had any power over her. It was just another chapter she'd closed. That evening, she met with her lawyer to finalize the last details of the divorce settlement. Evelyn, always composed, pushed the final document across the polished table. "It's done," she said, her voice resolute. "Jason's attempts to challenge the settlement have been dismissed. He's responsible for repaying what he stole, and he has no claim to your boutique, your home, or any of your assets. Lucy Kate exhaled slowly, a weight lifting off her shoulders that she hadn't even realized she was still carrying. Thank you, Evelyn, for everything. You did the hard part, Evelyn said, her smile warm. You kept your head. You protected what was yours. That's something a lot of people never learn to do. Lucy Kate left the law office with her head high, the final decree tucked into her bag like a trophy. She'd fought for this moment, not with rage or revenge, but with the quiet power of preparation and truth. As she walked back to her car, she thought of Jason probably still sulking in his parents' house, spinning stories to anyone who would listen. She didn't care anymore. His narrative no longer had any claim on her life. The next day at the boutique, she found a small crowd waiting at the door when she arrived. Local business reporters. They wanted to feature her in a story about women who turned heartbreak into triumph. Lucy Kate hesitated. She'd never liked the spotlight. But as she looked around at the faces of her employees at Mariah and the other young women she'd mentored, she realized this was bigger than her. This was a chance to show others what was possible. So she invited them in, giving them a tour of the boutique. She talked about the power of preparation, of trusting your instincts, of never letting someone else's betrayal define you. By the end of the interview, the reporter's eyes were bright with admiration. Your story is inspiring, she said. A lot of women need to hear it. Lucy Kate smiled. Then I hope they do. That night, she celebrated with her team at a small Italian restaurant down the street. They raised their glasses in a toast to new beginnings. Mariah said, her eyes shining. Lucy Kate clinked her glass and felt a surge of gratitude. Not just for the end of her marriage, but for the lessons she'd learned along the way. She'd spent so many years doubting herself, wondering if she was too much or not enough. But standing here surrounded by women who believed in her, she knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. When she got home, she poured herself a final glass of wine and walked through the rooms of her house, taking in the small details she'd once overlooked. The warm wood floors she'd chosen herself, the vintage mirror in the hallway that had belonged to her grandmother, the fresh flowers in the kitchen window, all of it hers, all of it safe from Jason's reach. She sat in her office, the framed screenshot of Jason's final text still on the shelf. She didn't keep it there out of bitterness. She kept it as a reminder of how far she'd come. As she turned off the light and headed to bed, she thought about what lay ahead. The jewelry line she was launching, the possibility of expanding the boutique to another city, the quiet thrill of knowing that for the first time in years, her future was entirely her own. Outside, the world was still and calm, the stars scattered across the night sky like confetti. Lucy Kate stood for a moment, breathing in the crisp air, feeling the warmth of her own strength settle around her like a shield. Jason had tried to destroy her. He'd tried to make her doubt everything she'd built, everything she was. But in the end, all he'd really done was reveal what had been there all along, her unshakable core. Her fierce independence, her quiet brilliance. She was done with him. Done with the lies and the chaos and the games. The story was hers now. And she was ready to write every last word of it herself. 6 months after the final decree was signed, the boutique had grown from a small beloved shop into a thriving brand with a loyal following. Lucy Kate had opened a second location across town, and her newly launched jewelry line was already making waves in the local fashion scene. On a cool autumn morning, she stood in the front window of the flagship boutique, carefully adjusting a display of her newest designs. The sun glinted off the delicate gold chains and shimmering gemstones, each piece a quiet testament to her resilience. Customers flowed in and out of the shop, the hum of laughter and conversation weaving through the air. Lucy Kate greeted them all with a warm smile, her voice calm and sure. There was no trace of the woman who'd once feared losing everything. No hesitation, no self-doubt. Only the quiet confidence of someone who had survived the storm and come out stronger. As she arranged the final pieces, her phone buzzed with a message from Amanda. Just wanted you to know Jason finally moved out of Mom's house. He's living in a small apartment now. Well, he's still blaming everyone but himself. Lucy Kate read the words without any of the old sting. Jason's bitterness was no longer her burden to carry. She replied with a simple, kind message. "Thank you for letting me know. Wishing you and your family peace." After putting away her phone, she stepped back to admire the display. Her eyes caught on her own reflection in the boutique window. She looked at herself poised, composed, unbreakable, and felt a surge of quiet pride. Not for how far she'd come, but for the fact that she'd never let herself be defined by someone else's choices. The door opened behind her, and Mariah approached with a grin. "Lucy," the local paper called. "They want to do a feature on the boutique's expansion, on how you've built this brand." Lucy Kate nodded, a spark of excitement in her chest. She was no longer just the owner of a little shop. She was a businesswoman who'd turned betrayal into opportunity, heartbreak into growth. And she was ready to share that story, not as a tale of loss, but as proof of what was possible. Later that afternoon, she met the reporter in the cozy back office she'd turned into her creative haven. She spoke candidly about the journey, about the quiet decisions, the relentless preparation, and the power of believing in herself. When the interview was done, the reporter closed her notebook and smiled. "Your story isn't just about divorce, Lucy. It's about rebuilding, reinventing. I think it's going to inspire a lot of people." Lucy Kate smiled, feeling the truth of that deep in her bones. "I hope so," she said. "Because that's what this has always been about, not just surviving, but thriving." That night, she walked home through the quiet streets, the city lights twinkling around her. She passed the cafe where Jason had once met Chloe, the restaurant he'd bragged about taking her to on their first trip. Those places used to sting, but now they were just backdrops, unimportant scenery in a story that had moved on. At home, she poured herself a glass of wine and walked through each room, the warm glow of the lamps turning the house into a soft haven. She paused at her office, her gaze falling on the framed screenshot of Jason's final text, "Have fun with your little shop." Below it, she'd hung her latest award for business excellence, a clear sign that she had done far more than have fun. She'd built something lasting, something entirely her own. She turned off the lights and stepped outside onto the porch. The night was cool, and still the air filled with the faint scent of autumn leaves. She tilted her head back and looked up at the sky, the stars bright and unwavering. Tomorrow she'd finalize plans for a third location. She'd meet with her design team to refine the next season's collection. She'd keep growing, keep building, keep proving to herself more than anyone that she would never again let anyone diminish her light. For Lucy Kate, the ending Jason had tried to write for her was nothing more than the beginning of her own story. A story of quiet strength, of fierce independence, of a woman who'd learned that the best revenge isn't about getting even, it's about getting better. And so she would. She took a final sip of wine, feeling the warmth of it settle in her chest, and whispered to herself in the night air, onward. If Lucy Kate's story resonated with you, share your thoughts below. Have you faced a moment when you chose to rise instead of crumble? Let's inspire each other, because the best stories are the ones we write ourselves.